Well, we're in studio for the Behind the U podcast. You know it's big, but more importantly, there's another Josh here. So, like, we had to be in studio, and this is the Behind the U, but I think I'm going to affectionately call it two bald Joshes.
Boom.
Both in black shirts,
Uh-huh.
talking college football.
Yeah.
Josh Pate, you've been here. You've been on this campus before. You haven't been here before. Welcome, a pleasure. Thanks for doing this.
So you live here, by the way. This is your home, and I appreciate you having me in. We had some cafecito right before we came on. So the way this will go is we'll sort of build to a caffeinated crescendo in about 15 minutes.
Nice.
And then we'll crash on the back half, and we'll put people to sleep. It'll be good.
I'm going to have to reorganize the questionnaire, right? Where's the good stuff that I really wanted to get into? So I told you off air, I'll tell you on, I'm a fan. You do a phenomenal job.
I appreciate it.
And I'm going to dig into some of the particulars later because that's the stuff for me that I find interesting. But I'm just going to prove to you that I listen.
Okay, let's go.
You ready? You just asked this yesterday, I think, as the episode dropped. So, or you asked someone to ask this of you. So I'm going to ask the question to prove that I listen. Josh Pate, will a 3-loss team make the playoff?
They will. They will make the playoff.
I picked up on that.
They will make the playoff. People will be outside their minds about it. They will make the playoff while a 2-loss or better team is left out. And I think that will be a Power 4 team. I don't think that'll be a G5 team. So I'm talking about a P4, like probably a Big 12 team, gets left out over a 3-loss SEC. And I've never been a believer you are purely what your record says you are in college football. Pro football, Sunday game, yes. Saturday game, the disparity, the gulf in strength of schedule is crazy in this sport. And it's made all the more crazy when you do away with divisions. I mean, I've got Missouri and Florida might as well not even play in the same sport this year, yet they're both playing SEC schedule. So I do think we'll have a 3-loss team. Okay.
Now, this goes, I think, to your defining like power rating system, right? Which I understand from the standpoint of like, it's a 3-loss team could be better than a 2-loss team.
Sure.
It just happens who they play, when they played them, et cetera, et cetera. To Florida, you said you have Florida, I think, at 21 in your. Is it the JP poll?
JP poll.
I want to attribute appropriately, and I'm assuming that's because most people look at Florida's schedule and go, "It is the toughest schedule since God created college football."
Right.
But that doesn't mean they can't be a top 25 team.
Sure, it's a really quality opponent. I don't look at a schedule at all. If I'm trying to power rate a team, like you and I could have a separate conversation about who has the toughest schedule. That has nothing to do with the quality of team, and that's inverted too. I could take the Kansas City Chiefs and give them the softest schedule. I could give them Liberty's schedule. Well, just because they won every game against a soft schedule doesn't make them bad. In fact, they're the Kansas City Chiefs. They just happen to play a soft schedule. But inverted, you could have a top 15 or top 20 team go 7-5 if they happen to play 5 or 6 teams rated ahead of them. And to me, that makes perfect sense. Now, in the AP ranking poll type world, it doesn't make sense.
Don't get me started because the polls come out, the lists come out, and I'm like, look, they're nice, but like, there's only really one that matters.
Right.
Give me the one, or maybe mid-season, but like, there's one that matters. Who are the final 12?
Sure.
Like, Miami's 19, right? At the end of the day, whether they were 19, 15, or 25, if they do what they're supposed to do, they should be positioned to be where they are, or vice versa for any team.
I think the other thing to do, though, the thing that's important for that committee is wins and losses need to be properly characterized. And so the week 1 game, what's always aggravated me is Miami will go to Florida week 1. And they'll play, in my opinion, a really, really quality opponent in the toughest environment they'll probably play in all year. They'll win, if they win that game, and Florida goes on to be a 7-5 or a 6-6 team. Miami will not get proper credit for that game.
Right.
And to me, they should get credit for it because you aren't just what your record says. You are also, it's very possible to play a team that's operating at a level in week 1 that they aren't operating at in week 11. And retroactively, people want to like shave credit away from the win you got. And that's all I've always believed in, defining the value of a game when it happens. Now, the one exception to that is if you beat a team no one thinks is any good, and then they go on to not lose another game. I have no problem retroactively adding credit to a game, but I hate retroactively taking credit away from it.
Right. Plus, there's so much changes in the course of a season, right? So, like, you discount the end product versus, well, that's not the team that they played.
Right.
For anybody, right?
Like, it takes some critical thinking to do that, though, and we're not in a world that likes to do that.
I'm like, wait, is the cafeteria? I think the cafeteria. I think I kicked in a little early, dude. It might have kicked in a little early. So since this is a UM podcast, and you were here on campus in Coral Gables, I believe the ceiling is how you put it for Miami was 11-1.
I put it at 12-0. If I said 11-1, I lied. So the ceiling is 12-0.
Well, I think I listened, but it also, that's the trickery of what I see on. But
I know what you did.
What did I do?
You heard my official prediction for him be 11-1.
Oh no, you're right, because you had 8-4, 12-0, and I got it. So, but just give me you are looking favorably upon us.
Sure.
For what reasons?
I think line of scrimmage, they'll be in a better position than anyone in the conference. I think I think they'll have the best pass rush.
By the way, it only matters for this conversation.
Sure.
It only matters what you think.
Yeah. I think they got the best pass rush quarterback duo in the conference, or the potential to be that. They haven't played a game yet. And so if I'm looking around, I don't like to let my judgment get clouded based on what has been. So, I'm a believer, a lot of people, when they think about Miami, they think about ineptitude of result the last however many years you want to go back to. They think of the ending of the Georgia Tech game last year. That's what they think of, which will have nothing to do with this year. If Miami loses 5 games this year, it won't be because of anything in the past. It'll be because people, both coaches and players in the here and now, didn't get the job done. So I want to judge you based on what's in your building right now. What's in this building right now is pretty crazy. I go to Alabama. I go to Georgia. I go to Ohio State. I've been at all those places in the past few months. The athletes walking around this place look a lot like the athletes walking around that place. Now, you got the whole Tarzan Jane thing, okay? So it doesn't guarantee you any wins, but it does guarantee you can't compete at the highest level without people who look like that. So they've got the players here, depth on things like the offensive line, they've got. They went and got Cam Ward, and then once they got that, it was game on. I think most people who understand this sport understood, once Mario stacks a couple of these recruiting classes on top of each other, those dudes will start to show up. Guys like Ruben Bain and Francis and whatnot, they already started to show up. But then you start stacking. So those guys have been here now second year. You get your freshman class in here. But these transfer portal guys, I think in the building, they know they hit on them. And when I was here in spring, that's kind of the thing you hope to hear come fall, is we hit on them. We got Damian Martinez from Oregon State. Oh, we hit on him. Well, I think they did. Tyler Barron looks like a freak show. We think we hit on him. Well, I think they did.
He was the guy, because for me, the first day out, you need the roster, because you're
right.
Especially in this day and age, half the team changed. So 2 things I wanted to, because I'm trying to use your reference point of college football to help us here. And it's a fight I've been fighting for a long time, right? And it's like, no, Josh, you're just a homer, or no, we really are that good. And I'm sitting there just punching back, and then ultimately I get Mike Tyson, like the Mike Tyson game, the guy gets really big and then KOs me, which is, you've seen a lot of other elite teams, right? You know what they look like. And you just mentioned it, but it is fair to say it's closer. Mm-hmm. What you've seen so far.
Yeah, I think kind of interested to watch another practice. Saw him work out in spring a little bit. The depth and caliber of athlete in the secondary, that's another thing. Everyone focuses on line of scrimmage. The way that the twos look at DB at Ohio State or Alabama, especially in the Saban years, or any year under Kirby, there are guys you don't even know the names of. And then you scroll on your phone and, oh, that's a 5-star true freshman. Oh, okay, that makes sense now. He may not even be on the field this year, but okay.
He may not even be the field. He may not even be on the roster. Yeah. I would joke, Saban probably lost more guys you never heard of than stayed on the team. But to get to that level, you got to have that kind of layering. And those guys, to me, then those guys they take care of it themselves.
Sure. You have to, it takes years of stacking to look like that. But having said that, okay, so then you can't just have conversations about what Bama, Georgia, et cetera, used to look like, because also their 2s and 3s don't look like that anymore. Kirby Smart, as you and I are talking just a couple of days ago, talked about what he called the deterioration of football, which translates to my 3s couldn't go win the Big 12 anymore because they transferred to the Big 12. So when you get to that,
we don't have that monopoly anymore. We just can't hold on to them.
Here's what's happening. If I'm on camera right now, you are here and you're trying to elevate, but at the same time, those guys are coming down a little bit from the legacy type depth they used to have, which means it doesn't take 5 or 6 years. All of a sudden, 2 or 3 years, if you recruit maniacally like they do here, and if you have guys in the portal that come in here like they do here, I'm not saying you just dead pull even with those guys. You pull well within punches reach.
This happens a lot faster.
Sure, yeah. It's like an accordion. You know, it used to be expand, expand, expand. Well, now there's a little more contraction.
We were out here.
Sure. And now not so much. So if you know how to play the accordion, you understand how the season will work.
I stopped. I took piano lessons, and I finally tapped out, and Mom had to give some white lies, and then it was just, I was done.
It worked.
That wasn't happening
It worked
anymore.
out.
The other thing, too, because you see all of college football, and, you know, us that are part of this team have now seen it in person, but from your standpoint of the transfer portal guys they got, whether it was in December or the spring, since you see more, you see all of it. You see who really, I know Cam Ward gets all the talk, so we'll just park him to the side. Who excited you of the guys you saw? They were like, man, I saw him play at his previous school. This is a good pickup.
We went up to the Oregon State-Washington game last year, and it was rainy and it was disgusting. It was weather you could live in Miami your whole life and never experience. And I saw I saw Washington go up there and pull out a game. But Damian Martinez was just a star up there that not much of the country knew about. And so when he transferred here, that raised my eyebrows. And so then, you know, I don't think Damian Martinez is the kind of guy that fully shines until the lights go on. There's some guys who are like heroes in the weight room, and they're heroes in like meetings, and every time a hype video goes out, they're the ones front and center. Then there are other guys who just win you football games on Saturday. Damian Martinez is a win you a football game on Saturday type guy, and he's here. I know a lot of people around this building think the world of him. I guarantee if I went to Topeka, Kansas, and found a college football fan and asked them, hey, give me 5 takes on Miami, Damian Martinez wouldn't be one of them. Yet, when we're watching that Florida game week 1, when we're watching Virginia Tech come in here on a Friday night, it could very well be that guy has 2 or 3 carries on 3rd and short, 4th and short that win you the football game.
Who else? Anyone else?
Tyler Barron is one that I know everyone around here circles him. I don't know how you don't circle him. We had
circled him.
Like we had a circus come to town every year where I'm from.
Here we go. We're getting the full paint mode right now. We're going in. So I got to say this. So we joked earlier that how he can look into a camera, and I'm hoping to look at the right camera, to do his show for an hour straight. And he goes, it came up in radio, which I came up in. So theater of the mind, and you're now, I think we're full. The Cafecito's brewing.
Well, so we had Riverfest in Columbus, Georgia, is the annual fair there.
We miss that here in Miami.
I hate you guys don't get to experience that. And so the fair comes to town, and every year you've got that attraction that you have to pay $1 to see behind the curtain. And there's an animal called a swamp hog.
There's something else behind the curtain.
Well,
but, if it's Tyler Barron, so be it. So be it.
But what they would do is they would have examples. You know, they would have the guy that conned you into paying the money. So he'd say, hey, step around the curtain and you could see this. And so you're standing on one side of the curtain. That guy lets you see his face as he walks around, and he goes like that right there. And all it is just some animal that you've never heard of from another country.
It's a walk-on.
Yeah. Tyler Barron is the kind of guy that if I see him for the first time, whoa,
yeah,
football players
100%.
Look like that. And it's the kind of thing also. So I've got buddies who watch the sport a lot. They don't get to see it. They don't get to cover it like I do. I'm blessed enough to be able to do this stuff. And every now and then, I'll text them, hey, this guy's an alien. This guy's a freak show. Barron got that text. Tyler Barron gets that kind of text. Just a different looking guy.
It is different when you're up close, and when you get to travel and you read about it, watch it on TV. But when you see the body, especially the bodies of most of the games you're going to, and I think that's you talked about the depth. I would say when people used to talk about championship teams, yes, those teams had great skill and great quarterback, but to me it was you don't have the bodies down in the trenches that are just like where did they unearth these creatures from, right? To me, that's one of the biggest differences when you get to the highest level of the sport.
I couldn't believe the Bama LSU game 2019 was the one that, Burrow is at LSU and it's Tua at Alabama, and just the president's there, like unbelievable atmosphere. And I go there, we're credentialed, we're on the sideline, and I had someone with me that I had not taken to a game before. They had been to games, but not one of those big games. And so I knew what I wanted to do with them. So I take him on the field pregame, and Bama's offensive line's warming up. And so this person is in disbelief. He said, the size, the physicality. And he was watching their twos warm up. Unbeknownst to him, he wasn't even watching their starters warm up. And you can feel the ground moving because a lot of those fields are built on platform anyway. So it's otherworldly to see not just, it's crazy to see one of those guys. Like if you live down here and one of them walks in a restaurant, you're seeing one of them. Imagine having like 11 or 12 of them that you think you can go to war with, because that's what you got to have that many bodies. You got to have that many bodies to practice with.
That's to get off the first guy off the bus.
Yeah.
You're sending him out. Now, the thing that I always think about too is you have those guys, and well, I don't know what you're going to see today, but a lot of times in the spring or this time of year, that they can actually withstand being out in this heat for 2 hours.
It's amazing.
Because I'm out on the sidelines, I'm like, where's the Gatorade? I'm just standing and observing, and I'm like, I'm parched. Can I get a Gatorade? And they're knocking heads for 2 hours.
Well, that's also, we're trying to figure out which game we're going to go to week 1. And so,
which game are you going to go to?
Well, obviously that Miami-Florida game's on our radar. It's on our short list.
Yeah.
And I almost feel guilty because I'm like, boy, it's going to be so brutally hot that day. I'm not even going to put on shoulder pads. I can go up the tunnel and get a drink anytime I want to. These dudes are going to have to just go at it for 3.5 hours.
My only debate that day is Johnson & Johnson or Gold Bond.
Yeah.
I don't know
And
what
if
I'm
you know,
doing.
you know.
I don't know what I'm going to do. And will there be a halftime wardrobe change? Because, I mean, it's hot down here, but it's the swamp for a reason.
Sure.
Yeah. So you seem to have a connection with our coach. You've been around him a lot. What is it that you admire? What have you gathered in your conversations that are for public consumption that you really admire about him? Or in our world of like being in that position of being the lead dog for a program that wants to get to where it wants to get, that you take out of that?
I love the different experiences he's had as a player and a coach. He's seen it done different ways. He's now deep enough in his career that he's had a chance to do it himself a few different ways. I appreciate how quickly he trims the fat off the bone in conversation and just gets to like the root of what is and what isn't. And like you just said, a lot of that's not for public consumption, but in a generic sense. I mean, we were in the weight room a little while ago. He walks up and pepper him 5 or 6 questions. And unlike a press conference, you're just getting the brutal truth. And candidly, a lot of it's good. Some of it you need to tweak. It can be better. But it's like, okay, I just talked to him for 3.5 minutes, and I got more than an hour-long conversation with some guys who kind of, they're not in a press conference setting, but they still want to
give you the press conference
quote.
quote.
And it's like, I appreciate the trust he also has. If I was a head coach, I wouldn't let anyone in my building. I'd never let anyone in.
I'm just like, I like that I can just waltz through here, but if I was in that seat, I'd be like,
yeah,
shut it down.
Yeah.
I don't trust anybody.
I don't tell him that, but if I were in his seat, get out of here.
Don't watch.
Yeah.
He's actually too busy getting ready for the season. Do we have a chance to see you week 1?
You do have a good chance to see me week 1.
Excellent. I imagine you also have you envisioned, because I think to myself, like, he's a maniacal recruiter. That's like not anything that nobody knows. But do you think to yourself of how that actually occurs? The literal, like, his maniacal actions relative to his ability to recruit, what he does on a daily basis.
I don't think there's a way to put into words to the average person who works a 9-to-5 job. Who thinks
first of all, you could not put anything in the sport into that kind of analogy.
Here's what's unfair. So in my line of work, when we get the access we do, it does grant you the ability to form an appreciation, still from a little bit of a distance, about the lifestyle of a coach or a player. And then you try and take it and you try and bottle it up and you try to explain it on air. And I end up getting accused of being a homer or carrying water for coaches, or running PR for coaches. And it's not that. I don't have a problem being critical of guys. I've been critical of Mario before. But what I'm not going to be critical of are things that I know to be false. And the other thing is, I am not going to stick my mouth or my nose in an area that I'm ill-informed, or I know is something that's being said, it's a popular narrative, but it really is not true.
That makes your show.
Well,
because you're pretty good at turning crap.
Yeah.
Into gold.
Yeah.
For yourself.
I think.
And the show.
When it comes to coaches, I'm normally the last one to get traffic on that, because I don't do hot seat talk. I think it's dumb.
Oh, so I hate it.
I think, but I also think just the baseline criticism that exists, you could talk about Mario, you could talk about anybody. There are so many more layers that go into explaining it.
I think the thing for me, and look, I'm inside, right? But I have such an appreciation for what they do, the amount of work they put. Whether the result's the result, but like no one has any idea of really what goes on back there that is really going on every day.
Yeah.
For me to sit there and go and just be so careless with the criticism, or just and the other thing is, the sport in and of itself, like Dan Orlovsky had that post of the playbook. Like they look at the sport as we played it as kids, blocking, tackling, catching, running. Like it's a science project.
It's unbelievable.
It's like you have a PhD in a subject matter, just like no one would say anything about a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer. So I know what I know. I also know what I don't know, and I know there's a lot of people, and even myself, don't know unless you've lived in the film room, in the meeting room, and on the practice field.
I'll tell you what helped me. I grew up, now granted, my dad was like a youth football coach, but I still was around that element. And so I was around that from an early enough age to understand the know what you don't know thing. And I have never to this day, nor will I ever, do the questioning play calling thing. I will not do it.
Well, there's a very simple, well, go ahead.
Oh, well, I just know that I have sat in these meetings before. I understand how layered and intricate a play call is. A play call starts in the spring. You know, the 14th play or the 4th play on the 3rd drive of the Florida game, you will watch as a viewer and think, oh man, Shannon just came up with that now. That stuff's been worked on in spring. And so, like, you question it. You throw stuff at your TV when it doesn't work, and you go on your message board, and not everybody, but people go on their message boards or Twitter, and they'll question play calling. And I've always pitched this. No one's ever taken me up on it. I've always pitched a show. I'm willing to fund it and produce it, where I get a coordinator who is willing to go face-to-face with a fan who is questioning them on play calling, and to watch how one-sided that would be. And to watch how quickly intellectually that fan gets twisted into a pretzel, because it's impossible for them to know what they don't know, like you just said. So my theory has always been keep your mouth shut on what you don't know, because there's plenty enough you can know about this sport to where you don't have to delve into that lane, because these coaches, folks think they're jerks. They're actually some of the nicest folks in the world, because they could make you look stupid. If they wanted to and they had enough time, they could really make folks look stupid.
It wouldn't take very long.
It would take about 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah, and so that's what I know. Like, there's just so much that goes in. There's so much involved in that singular play that's also reactive in the moment, that's happening in milliseconds. Sure. And so that's why I stay at a distance, because I have too much respect for what they do, and I also know it's, we didn't just turn on the cameras and start talking.
Doesn't mean they make 100% correct decisions. Just means when they fail, they already know much more about why it failed than I'll ever know. And they're already aware of it before I'm aware of it. So
they also could have made the absolute correct decision.
And it didn't work out.
Other people have to execute.
Correct.
So I think we're getting to that 30,000 foot view on football that we were requested to do ahead of time. I need to know about Pate State, because I do listen, but I think I came in like middle to end. So I need a little more. You got to open that book and door a little bit for me and give me a little. It's a figment of your show, but is it like your own little institution, imaginary institution?
Imaginary institution is a good word for it. It's not an AAU accredited institution.
Can I go there?
You can go there in your mind. Yeah.
Can I get some kind? Like, I have not received my degree yet from a very esteemed institution. I was wondering if I could maybe give a commencement address and like get maybe some kind of honorary doctorate.
I don't know why, because we call everything on the fly at Pate State anyway. It did occur to me, we had a staff meeting last week.
For Pate State?
Yeah. Well, we had a staff meeting for our show.
It's a separate staffing?
Yeah. We had a staff meeting, and my producer said, we add like thousands of new listeners and followers per week. You haven't even explained this thing in like a month or two, or maybe a year or two. You probably should take a show and just explain all this. Well, so what we did was about 2 years ago, it just kind of came out of my mouth one day. Like I kept saying, if so-and-so were to play a football game today. And so I'd pick a random school. If Alabama played today, or if Georgia played today. Well, I thought to myself, we'll just make up a school. If Pate State played today, or at Pate State, I wouldn't do it this way. Well, I kept on saying that. And I didn't even think anything of it. The audience will normally tell you if you've hit a home run on something. And so they started rattling it off. And so I thought to myself, well, there's probably some runway there. So we could do everything from merchandising to branding to intellectual property, whatever we want to do with it. And we're already a college football show anyway.
You could have. I mean, I'm just going to give you one. You could have a Pate State college game day.
Sure. You could have anything you want to.
No, I'm saying you literally could have, like, you could take your show on the road, just make sure it's opposite that, and you could do something.
Yeah. So we ended up putting a little mascot on it that I'm actually going to unveil next week.
Nice.
So we just made a fictitious university, basically.
Are you going to spend 22% of the revenue sharing on your players?
Of course.
Up to the max.
Of course. We'll have the full
Is your collective in order?
It's more than in order. Yes. It's,
now, I'm going to do you a solid. Is Academy Outdoor a part of the collective?
Yeah, and then, of course, gas station recruiting war has been going on.
So I assume this is just on your travels, like where you pit stop.
Basically, yeah.
And what is there a defining, like, how do we determine who's the 5-star?
I'd leave it up to the audience.
Who has the best hot dog that rolls down the roller?
So to me, a cleanliness of bathroom matters.
That's a key.
Variety of trail mix to me matters because you got to have raisin-less.
You don't look like you, but you're very selective about what you eat at the gas war.
Yeah,
I mean at the gas station.
So cleanliness of bathrooms are really a big deal to me.
Do you ever walk in and like just give the key back?
I haven't gone to one lately that gives you the key attached to the ruler.
Right.
That's a little old school. Those are certainly not like franchised. Those are one-offs. Those are independently owned.
They're not on the. They're not here. They're not at Pilot or Racetrack.
They did not make the cut. No, but that's been a lot of fun, man. It's just we've created a show big enough to where national brands want to be a part of it. I like doing a show independently in rural Georgia a few years back. You dream of that, but there's your dreams, and then there's what like the world says reality is, and those two.
I'm a big Racetrack guy only because there's literally one right by my office, and I'm a VIP, and I just whether it matters or not, because I do the math in my head. Like I'll fill up my car, but I get 10 cents off as a VIP, which really at the end of the day is like $3, but I feel like I'm a champ.
It's a big deal. It's $3.
And I get reward points.
Yeah, it's $3 you wouldn't have had. It feels so good.
Which I could use on what though? That's the only problem. Cafecito. I probably could use it on Cafecito.
Yeah, or you could just get someone to bring it to you like we do here.
Yeah, Cam Gorby, shout out. So how we feeling? Like, do I need to have a clean landing here? Are we still skying high?
I'm good. Yeah. Plus, I've got this water here. Who knows what we poured in that? I'm good.
All right. So 12-team playoff. If I know you from listening, not a fan.
I'm not a huge fan. I think the product itself will be amazing. I'm just not a.
Have we come around as we're getting closer? Or
no, it's not. But what I did promise the audience is I'm not going to be the old guy who sits on the porch and just yells at the cloud playoff. I won't do that. All I have maintained.
But there'll be a told you so somewhere towards the end.
Sure. Well, there'll be anecdotal evidence to go any which way you want to. But what I will not do is continue to argue about it and continue to bang on it. But to me, we're ultimately reverse engineering the sport to ultimately get to the same destination. This year, it won't be like that. Next year probably won't be like that because I think we got about a 2-3 year period here where you've got to recalibrate your mind. Like people have to learn what the 12-team playoff is. In the first couple of years, the 12-team playoff will be to most people a tournament where anyone could win a national title. It actually isn't going to be that. It's going to be a tournament where about 4 or 5 teams could win the title and the rest are just there. Your mind will become reconditioned to understand that in time. First couple of years, Kansas State versus Iowa State towards the end of the year, and they're playing to lock down a 10 seed. I mean, that'll have hysteria around the game because people will legitimately think one of those teams could win a title. You will learn that they can't in time.
Maybe those people will.
It'll be enough. It'll be enough to sell it as a game with playoff implication. My whole thing is I was raised to appreciate that there's value in Saturdays just because it's a Saturday for college football. I never needed that sticker. I never needed the playoff sticker on the side of a game. I cared about it all. And I know that's a little bygone in thinking, but it doesn't change the way that I feel. And so I'm looking at it and I'm saying, at the end of the day, I still think the same teams are going to end up winning this thing. It's just we created this postseason mechanism that in the aggregate, it just redirects the meaning. So we've got some games that'll have more meaning that are played by teams that have 2 or 3 losses and they're trying to back their way into the playoff. And we're taking meaning away from games featuring teams who now know they have wiggle room. Like I think about Ohio State and Michigan. We've been on the field for that game the past 3 years. It's been incredible. And the loser is probably going home. At the very least, the loser has to be otherwise perfect. Now I think of those games and I think of playing for seeding and I think of knowing that they could play 6 days later, too. Don't forget, we've also done away with divisions.
But they can go 3. They could go 3 times at some point, right?
And so, to me, you will never, ever, ever tell me that the conference title game or the playoff game is worth more than the game that's existed for 500 years. Because that rivalry game, that's the thing. That's the institution. That's the pillar.
And it's this sport.
Yes. The other stuff's man-made. The other stuff is sort of Johnny-come-lately to me. Even though, the powers that be would tell you there's more on a conference title game. There's more on a playoff game.
But even conference title games, not really, because it's the same thing, right? If a team's already in, and there's Clemson Pitt.
Yeah, you're playing for a bye. I get all that. But I just, it doesn't have the meaning in my heart that it does in some people. That's fine. We debate everything in this sport, so that's wonderful. I just think we're going to the same place, and we're just taking a little different route. And in the aggregate, the route takes us around some of the stuff that was great about the sport.
Your better half is here.
Yes.
Do you have these conversations about reverse engineering the playoff model, like at night when you're at dinner?
All the time. All the time.
She's like, Con, listen, they missed it. They had at 8 they would have been fine, but 12, I'm with you.
Oh man! And last year, I mean, the way the thing went down with Michigan, the Florida State playoff, like everything I have a strong take on, she has a strong take on. Now there is a perfect world where
is that true? Okay.
Yeah, there's a perfect world where we agree on everything. There's the real world we live in where we do not. And so, you think outside, you think, oh, those are just lighthearted. No, those are some of the most contentious fights you could ever have.
That's why you're here in Miami. This is the make good.
Yeah, it's.
Hey, hon, listen, I know we disagree on who gets the bye. So let's go to South Florida, hang on the beach for a few days.
Michigan sign stealing notwithstanding, do you want to go to the beach? It's like the Etch-a-Sketch.
But we'll stop by Coral Gables first. We'll have a cafecito. There's some wonderful Cuban food coming. We'll definitely get the beach chairs. I'll pay for the beach chairs and the beach service, and we'll go back and just let me win one or two.
It's nice to be here. It's really nice to be here is what I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm glad to have you. So if I asked you to step down in your role as chancellor of Pate State and you could become the commissioner of the sport, give me your first couple of moves.
I would love to move our title game to Saturday.
Oh my God!
I would love to work with the NFL. So I've got this big tirade that I could go on. I'll condense it for you. It is disgusting to me that the NFL gets what it gets from college football and gives nothing back. So the NFL, and no one in college can say this because they're terrified of the NFL. The NFL gets a multi-billion-dollar marketing and developmental product from college football. When guys are drafted, you don't have to flip through your phone. You don't have to wonder who this is because you've watched him in college for 3 or 4 years. Also, the team that guy goes to, they don't have to develop him much. He's ready to play in the NFL largely because he was trained in college and developed in college. That is worth billions of dollars to the NFL.
No farm system. It is a farm system, not on your payroll.
Right. They don't have to shell out for anything. And so they get. And if I step in as commissioner, here's what I'd ask for in return. We've got to make a Saturday national championship game happen for us because it makes no sense that we play on Monday. And the reason we're playing on Monday is because you guys have a wild card game on that Saturday night. So here's what we're asking for in return. What we're asking for is network synergy. Whatever network this playoff national championship game is going to be on, give us a double lead in. Give us a 12 o'clock NFL playoff game, give us a 4:30 NFL playoff game, and then lead it into a primetime college football national championship game.
You're bordering on tirade now.
I am. It's really kicked in now.
The voice has gotten a little more stringent. The octave's gone up.
But do you? When's the last time you ever heard anyone in college question the NFL?
You're gonna be like, no way, Josh. But I remember sitting somewhere in this parking lot that aligns Santa Mauro. I've had a lot of conversations about the sport, and I remember at one point as we were pushing towards where we are now, especially with payment, NIL, and then ultimately maybe employee status, that my thought processes were like the NFL basically overtook college football from a corporate business standpoint, the ultimate business. And maybe not literally, you know what I'm saying? But if there was that kind of synergy, the kind of marketing prowess you would have.
Yeah.
And the layering of that stuff, and there would have to be money exchange and rights fees, but you would have an animal.
What you don't have is the proper people at the table to even broach that on the college side of things. I mean, who runs this sport? I can tell you who runs the NFL. There are 32 of them. I can tell you who runs the NFL.
That's why you're the commissioner.
Well, theoretically.
You'd have to give up the show, but if you needed a late kick Josh fill-in.
Yeah. A lot of the branding wouldn't even have to change. Are you willing to?
By the way, it would not have to. It wouldn't have to literally. I mean, I'll have to hit the gym a little bit to get up to speed.
But we've got some stuff that we can take care of that. That'll be good.
Which is why I didn't wear the white shirt, because I was like, you know what, this is a little saggy, and I'm not. Just
I appreciate
quite there
that
yet.
because the lawsuit would have been forthcoming.
Yeah,
but no one ever even broaches that. Just something as simple as that. It would have broad fan approval. The other thing is, with a lot of the realignment and a lot of the decisions for like conferences becoming what they've become, I've not been a big fan that this sport is supposed to exist for the player and the fan, and yet player and fan are the last two entities that I ever hear considered when a lot of these changes are made. I hate that. Now that sounds really like idealistic and childlike in your wonder of how the sport's supposed to work, but it's not. That's actually how the sport is supposed to work. It's not supposed to enrich and serve a few people, and they just kind of toss them whatever scraps we want. They'll take it, they'll eat it up, and I think that kind of ignorance really hamstrung things like pro wrestling and NASCAR.
How is it, because I've listened to you enough, how is it that, and I agree with a lot of the things you say from the standpoint of, how is it we've gotten to a place in a sport where you can have these conversations, we're partially right here, wherever else you're having them, things that make sense, but they never actually get to where they actually impact the sport?
Well, it's because the tail wags the dog in this sport. In the NFL, broadcast networks do what they're told. In college football does what they're told by broadcast networks. And that's because there is a serious lack of leadership and individual power platforms. In other words, you can't tell me who runs this sport. There are no names they have to answer to. In the NFL, they do.
Plus you also have, right, like you have, and now you have 4 conferences, right, who, it'd be nice to say like Major League Baseball, we're all collectively bargained for the enrichment of the sport, but there's no benefit to, you know, the SEC to empower the ACC.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Unless there was someone in charge.
That's the other, and it's a much longer form conversation, but that's the other thing I saw happening with the playoff. Like, I remember the BCS days. We all remember the BCS days. And there were a lot of people, myself included, any given year who would yell, oh, we need a 4-team playoff or whatnot. And I remember why I was mad. I remember thinking we had an incomplete outcome.
I remember Savannah was irate.
She was.
Yeah,
she was.
I mean, it was a disaster.
But I remember thinking to myself, okay, so I want this for one reason. It seems like some other people want playoff expansion for another reason. And really, when you look back on it, what you had was you had some people who had enough foresight to understand no one's running this ship right now. And so it makes pretty good money. It could make us a lot more money. Like, we could build an ATM with a college football playoff sticker on the side. And now, it needs to pass the smell test. So we need to convince all these people they need it. This sport's been fun for them for 100 years, but we need to convince them their sport's broken so that they'll support us in building this playoff that's going to print us money. And in retrospect, that's pretty much what they did. And there was no one in the room with a powerful enough voice, at least, to ever say, hold on, this will make us more money. Is it the smartest thing to do? Now, that didn't break college football because you didn't push it past a certain threshold. But where's the threshold? Is it 8 teams? Is it 12 teams? Is it 16 teams? Because this is not stopping at 12. And so when I argue against, playoff expansion, it's so much broader in scope than what's it going to do in any given year. It's almost not even about that. It's about understanding the motivation for the people who are pushing for it. And it's so much different than a fan at home who just wants their 10-2 team to maybe have a spot as a 9 seed any given year. It's like, I'll listen to that guy. I'll argue with him, but I'll listen to him. I just want that guy to know you're pushing for things that this group over here in the corner, these dudes wearing suits in the corner, are pushing for. You don't have the same motivation they do.
I am oddly, overly intrigued by like the intricacies of NIL, employee status, non-employee status, and I know you've talked about it a lot. Where do you think we end up? Where do you think the end is?
It feels like whether it's 3 years or 10 years down the road, it feels like you eventually get to collective bargaining. It feels like that's where it goes. I feel
doesn't that help?
I guess it does. Like I've always felt out of my lane in that entire conversation.
So this is like an offensive coordinator making a play.
Basically. But I've felt like we're living in a documentary for the last few years. And I think we're about 38 minutes into a 2-hour documentary. And by the end of that documentary, this thing's become fully professionalized and we've got collective bargaining. And like you look back at the 38-minute mark and think, boy, it seemed so in the weeds and it was so convoluted. But if you could have ever just seen the whole thing, the story arc made total sense. So I think that's where we're going. The whole revenue share thing, that's great for players. To me, What's funny is people who are arguing in an advocate position for the players, I never hear talking to actual players. It's almost like they have their own motivation. If I were a player right now, I firmly believe you'll never have it better. In the future or history of college athletics, no one's ever had it better than football players have it right now. You'll never have more power than you have right now. You'll never have more leverage than you have right now. Structure will come. There's no way the people who run this sport are going to allow this free-for-all to continue to a certain degree. And so structure will be the name of the game. If that's collective bargaining or revenue sharing or whatever, that's where we're going. And it could be that it's just a sticker on something, but we all kind of wink and nod and know what it is. So whatever it's called versus whatever it becomes, I'm worried about what it becomes. Whatever we call it's whatever we call it.
So what would you want it to become? How about that?
I would love, and this
there
is,
we go.
Rephrase.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
So this is me personally talking. I would love, first off, to be able to go back about 20 years and for the NCAA to have sensible legislation then so that we could have avoided all this. I'm told we can't
Now
do
you're
that.
the old man on the porch.
Yeah. So in lieu of that, I would love to see the revenue sharing model instituted, but I would love to see a scale instituted that greatly incentivizes you sticking around. You don't need to sign guys to multi-year contracts or scholarships, whatever we want to call them, if you properly incentivize and properly structure their rev share package. You should be making more as a junior at Miami than I make as a freshman at Miami. Now, if I don't like it at Miami, I should be free to transfer anywhere I want to, but if I stay, I should make more money than I will if I transfer because we are incentivizing roster cohesion. So that to me, and I don't even know if that's fully legal, but if we could ever do that, if we could get collective bargaining or whatever it takes to do that, that serves all parties. Players make money. Coaches have a better sense of who's going to be on their team. Guys are incentivized to say.
Fans have a better idea who's on their team.
But you're not imprisoning guys. You're not tying them to a program. They can go wherever they want to. You still have the NIL function there, but the NIL function operates a lot more the way NIL was always meant to function, which is truly guys who get there and establish themselves, have market value, and they can capitalize upon that. Some of that is idealistic. I think some of that's executable if you get the right people in the room.
All right, last couple of things. I just need to know, how do you pull off the show, man? Late kick, staring right at the camera for 1 hour. How do you pull it off? And sometimes longer.
Yeah, went an hour 29 the other night. A really good staff is the first thing. You got to have people you trust, and it's a very small circle. But I got a couple of folks I trust to touch our show, and they've been there virtually from the beginning. And hope to keep them there for a long time.
So give me, game day is, Thursday night at 8. Is it a 8-hour day in the office? I know you're probably, in your head's churning all the time, but like, give me this is the stuff I like all this, but this is like into my creative heart and soul about pulling this off.
We'll probably start that process about 8 or 9 a.m., not in the office. Some of that can be done remotely. You will format loosely, very loosely, where you want to go with the show, and we'll have that done by 11 or 12, break for workout or lunch or whatever, come back 2 or 3 o'clock, you're in the office, 4, 5, 6, 7 is your show time, and then you go post-prod, and we like to have a lot of that mapped out for how we want to distribute through social and digital afterwards. But the way I like to do it is not, let's sit down at a table and start our pre-production meeting at 2 and start from scratch. I just like to have myself and the staff totally immersed at all times in the world. So it's almost like show prep is never off. Like you never switch that off.
You don't. I'm at your brain's. I'm sure your brain is not turning itself off. And there's the notes app is grinding. Right. Group chats are going. But seriously, it's post-it notes. Is it post-it notes? What is it? Because you are literally dead. I am not BSing you. The fact that you can look dead into a camera for an hour and 29 minutes and really never look down and not break script is ridiculous.
The key to that is not have a script, and the key is
keep that.
Well, so recall of your knowledge, like recall of
just
your topic,
even just your rundown-ish.
But the way I always look at it, the way I would train someone is, so you and I might as well have been eating lunch over the past 45 minutes. Like this is largely, without the mic, how you and I would talk if we were just eating lunch. Okay, so the show should be no different. I haven't needed notes. You haven't needed, you've had questions maybe, but like you and I could easily just riff for an hour or two. Because we're talking about stuff we know. We would be immersed in this as a hobby for fun if we didn't do it for a living. So to me, how disingenuous would it be to ask an audience to watch me for an hour if I'm constantly having to look at notes? That just indicates to them, I don't know enough about this stuff to warrant an hour of your time. I mean, the science of this is sports fans are the most stubborn people on the planet. We are sports fans. Everybody who's a college football fan has a take and they think it's right. And the craft here, the psychology here is you got to be authoritative enough to make the most stubborn group of people in the world defer to you. They're willing to shut up and listen to what you have to say. I better be able to shoot from the hip and not need notes, or else you ought not waste your time listening to me. And then the other thing is, if you and I can go to lunch and we can do this, then I ought to be good enough to visualize you in the form of a camera, and I should be able to talk to you. I should be able to talk to you right now. I should be able to do this for 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours. Now, if you ask me about molecular biology, that's when I need the notes.
Wait, that's the camera.
Yeah,
the camera.
that's what I'm deferring.
Well,
yeah,
that's what we're talking. Wait, we're talking about molecular biology. I had no idea. And then last thing, how'd you get started? Not like the break from. You said you mentioned. I guess you did radio, maybe local TV.
Sure.
But where did you make the leap into that platform? With 247.
So I'd done radio and worked that into local TV down in Columbus, Georgia. And I knew mid-20-teens when like Facebook and YouTube started to let you do the live broadcast thing. That was like the light bulb moment. I knew that was going to be a game changer. I just got to get on it somehow. So I started at the same time doing my own little show. And eventually, when my contract ended down there, I was just going to leave and start a YouTube channel. And I ended up negotiating an independent contractor status as a news anchor. And because I wasn't an employee, I negotiated use of their studio to produce my own YouTube show. And we get like 20 viewers, 30 viewers. But what we were able to do is we were able to have a broadcast studio that we could produce a YouTube show out of, which no one else had. Hardly anyone has that now. And
who found you?
Shannon Terry, who had founded
started
Rivals.
every goddamn recruiting and scouting platform. Literally, that guy, he has started and leveraged 4 different of these. No offense, same thing.
It's beautiful, isn't it? It's so beautiful.
That's amazing.
So he doesn't just, he's a good recruiter himself.
Yeah, I bet.
And so he cold called me one day. I sent him to voicemail. I didn't recognize the number. And it's like,
that's Terry.
Well, it's just a Nashville area code. That's all it was. And so he said, we're not even doing anything like that. And we've got the infrastructure to do it. If you're willing to move to Nashville, I want you to do that for us. And so I came up there in 2020 and we started the show. CBS fully backed it. And then COVID happened, which was terrible, but for the show's purposes was a blessing in disguise because it got everyone out of here except for me and my director. And so we had emergency access to the building. So we did our show. No one interfered. The numbers immediately scaled. And by the time folks came back to the office several months later, we were already making money on the show. So it was proven. And no one interfered. To this day, I've been there 4 years now. We've got nothing but praise. We've got nothing but assistance and resource. And now I go to any game I want to on Saturday. And we do our shows anywhere we want to. We had 15 head coaches come on the show because we went to their campus this spring. So now it's not easy, but it's you've got the wind in the sails now. And now you just got to execute at a high level, which to me is the easy part because I don't do this as a side job. So it's the easiest thing in the world to talk about college football.
So look right there, because I told you off air, on air, I listened to you. I listen to you, I watch. I think you do a phenomenal job. Not even just the technical aspect of like looking in that camera, but the way, actually you described it, I hadn't put it in those words, right? How you present the subject matter. And even though you might be shooting from the hip, it's very well thought out. And that fact that you present in a way that makes you think, critical thinking, which I enjoy. I like getting deep on stuff, so I enjoy that stuff. But look right over there and just tell anyone who might be listening to this how they can find you.
Yeah. If you love the visual medium, then the YouTube channel is Late Kick with Josh Pate. We do a live show Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday nights. If you don't want to stay up and watch it, it's right there on demand the next morning, and it probably has not aged any overnight, so it's still evergreen as much as it could be the next morning. If you're a podcast guy or girl, everywhere you get your podcast, Late Kick with Josh Pate, and it's at Late Kick Josh on any social channel. And if that's not enough of me, then you got a problem, because I think that's too much of me.
All right, when you get the merch, I want some Pate Steak here.
Well, you'll be hearing from me very, very soon.
So I will say this was not an interview. This was a conversation over a lunch that is coming.
Yes.
Josh Pate, thank you for being here. Appreciate you doing this.
I appreciate you having me.
All right.